Hi guys! God really put on my heart this week to read Job, which is really random. I've honestly never read Job before, but after reading it, I understood why he was telling me to read it for like a week. And I guess I'll just start by giving you a little preface to the story of Job. Job was always a man after God, and he was very prosperous. He had an abundance. It says that he was basically one of the richest in the East. And Satan was sent to test him. Satan told God that, oh, your man Job, he will curse you if he loses everything he has. Of course he loves you and is sacrificing things to you because you have blessed him abundantly, of course. But if you take that away, then he will curse you. And God said, have your way, but do not take his life. And so this was, Job is basically being tested. And I saw something very significant in just the first chapter. It says that his animals were raided, and then a servant came and escaped the raid to tell Job this. In the middle of him talking, another servant came and said, I have escaped to tell you this as well. Your children were in a house, all four walls collapsed. They are all dead now. And while he said this, there was also a fire that killed servants and more of his animals, more of his livelihood. Could you imagine that, like, all three at the same time? Your life literally crumbled to the ground. Your livelihood, your servants, your help, and then your family, your children. And I thought it was very noticeable to realize immediately what he did. It says in verse 20, chapter 1, at this, Job got up, tore his robe, and shaved his head. Then he fell to the ground in worship and said, naked I come from my mother's womb, and naked shall I depart. The Lord gave me, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. In all this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. I thought this was pretty crazy to think that everything was just taken away from him. And instead of being angry, instead of cursing God like Satan said he would, he goes back to the basics. He goes as he came, tears his robe, which I'm sure was expensive because he was the richest in the East, and he bows down to God to worship. Goes back to the basics of just going to God one-on-one to worship him, and to not charge God of any wrongdoing of this, but to know God enough to trust him from what just happened, to trust that he is going to use this for the greater good, to know God enough to know that he's the only one to comfort Job in this time, when his family was just killed, his servants, his animals raided, burned. To know God enough to just go worship him, to know God enough to know that this despair he's feeling right now, this pain he's feeling, that he is better, that he is more worthy, that he knows that this was coming, that God is not shocked by this, but that God is preparing him for something, that God is going to use this for something. And I felt that was pretty noticeable as well, that, like, if you're in a storm and, like, some people say cling to the ship, which is right. If you're in a storm, you're not going to jump off the boat into the water. You're going to cling to the ship as hard as you can with everything you have. Cling to it for life. Same with God. If God's the ship in this metaphor, you're not going to leave God and be like, how dare you do this? This is your fault. You're going to cling to God and be like, God, help me. I'm going to worship you. I'm going to praise you. Praise be your name. Worthy are you for the greater good. I know the plan and purpose you have for my life. And I am trusting you. I'm trusting you, God, because I know God. I know, God, I know your love for me. I know that you have plans. I know it is written in your word that you have plans for me. It is written that if you are for us, who could ever be against us? It is written that no weapon formed against us shall prosper. So I think very noticeable to me was God telling me in these storms, tell my people, like my little platform here, to cling to the ship, cling to God. Do not run away from him. Do not charge him of any wrongdoing. I think that it was just it touched me. Like, I literally was crying when I read this literally last night, and I was just like, to feel that much pain and that much shock, to immediately, a traumatic thing to lose your family, traumatic thing to lose your way of income, your life, your status, all in one moment, your servants that he probably knew every day, talked to every day. And in that one moment that he found that traumatic moment, that shock, that he literally took off his expensive robe, shaved his head. He went before God as he initially was before God as a baby, humbled himself in doing that, and went back to the basics of just worshiping God. Went back to the basics of, I know who you are, and I know who you say I am, what you say I have, Lord, and I trust you. That I know you're the only one to comfort me, so I'm going to you and I'm worshiping you. And I'm still blessing. He blessed God's name. And I think that is literally, that's where I would want to be. That's where, theoretically I would be like, okay, if this ever happens to me, God, I'm going to you. But to really do it, to really do that in the moment, immediately in the moment, that's really knowing God. And I guess just this little clip was to just share with you guys to really cling to God in the storm. In the midst of the storm, cling to God, cling to his word, because everything you need, you will find in there. Worship him in the storm. Immediately, if something happens, if you're struggling, if you're confused, if you're in depression or your anxiety, if there's a traumatic event that even happens, worship God in the moment. Because he will give you that peace of God that is unexplainable, undeniable, that you don't even know where it came from. That Job probably got the peace of God from going and worshiping to him, when he shouldn't have had peace, because everything just got taken away from him. I just encourage you guys to go to God in the midst of the storm. Don't stray away, don't pull from him. To go to him because you know him, because you know his love for you. And if you don't, his love is mighty, his love is strong, it is relentless. It is relentless in his pursuit of you. To cling to him, and just, even if you're in a storm and you haven't even prayed, if you don't even know God, if you don't have a relationship with God, or if you're returning back to God, still go to him in the storm. He's been waiting this whole time. Knock on the door and you shall find. He's waiting right around the corner. So I encourage you to get in the word. First off, get in the word and just get to know God. Get to know his love for you. And that's how you're going to build that trust. That Job, he was sacrificing every single chance he had to give God what was rightfully his. He was checking his heart every single time with God, and that's why he was so blessed. So he knew God prior to the situation. And I think that's very important as well, is know God. That way when you're in those situations, when you're in those storms, you're not afraid. You have the peace of God that people around you are like, what is wrong with them? They should be freaking out. But no, you have the peace of God because you know who God is. You know who he says you are. You know that his love for you, you know his plans for you. You know what is written in the Bible that has already been paid for you. And I encourage you to just worship in whatever you're going through again. He moves in worship. He inhabits praise. And I think in the midst of the storm, one of the best things you can do is worship. Even if you don't feel like it. Fake it till you make it. And guarantee you will feel a shift when you worship and lift up what you're going through in worship. That was just my little revelation from last night that I read and I felt like I had to share. Thank you for watching. Continue to hope to do more of these. Again, thanks for watching.